You were right. You had the data. You had the arguments. And you lost an idiot. That wasn't bad luck. It was a trap your own intelligence built. I know exactly why you're here. Not out of curiosity. Not academic interest in philosophy. You're here because it happened again. Maybe yesterday. Maybe last week. But it happened. You were in a room. A meeting, a family dinner, an online conversation. And you listened to someone speak with absolute, unshakable conviction about something they had completely wrong. You felt that pressure in your chest. Your brain mapped every flaw in their reasoning within milliseconds. You had the data. You had the logic. You had the history. And you lost. Not because you were wrong. You lost because you were right, and they didn't care. You argued. You explained. You reframed. You used analogies, examples, patience you didn't have. And they stared at you, blinked, and repeated the exact same thing they said at the start, this time with more certainty. You left that interaction drained. Not physically, differently, that deep exhaustion. The kind that makes you question whether you're the one who's wrong, whether you're too complicated, too serious, too much. And the worst part? It wasn't the first time. You tried being more patient, tried picking your battles, tried ignoring it, tried humor, tried silence. You've read about nonviolent communication, emotional intelligence, finding the other person's perspective. Nothing changed because you were sold a lie. They told you the solution was a better technique, a more empathetic approach, a more carefully constructed argument. They told you that if you just explained it right, they would understand. But Schopenhauer knew 2 centuries ago what no one told you. Logic has absolutely no currency in a debate with a fool. None. And every time you use logic as a weapon, you're not winning the battle. You're feeding the enemy. The question isn't how to argue better. The question is why your own intelligence is what puts you at a disadvantage every single time you open your mouth. The lie wasn't about technique. The lie was about what you are. For years, they told you the solution was to communicate better, argue more clearly, have more patience, more empathy, more data, that if you found the right words, reason would win. Lie. Reason doesn't win. Reason has never won. Because fools aren't playing the game of truth. They're playing the game of ego. And you showed up to a game of emotional survival armed with logic, the most useless weapon that exists in that context. Your intelligence isn't a weakness because you don't know how to argue. It's a weakness because you believe arguing is the point. It isn't. The point is power. And power doesn't need your logic. It needs your awareness of how others operate and the coldness to use that in your favor. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this in the 19th century, and the world ignored it because it was too uncomfortable to accept. In his work, The Art of Being Right, 38 Stratagems for Winning Any Debate, he didn't write about how to find the truth. He wrote about how truth has no function in a confrontation with someone who doesn't want it. He observed a law that modern psychology confirmed 200 years later. People don't debate to learn, they debate to dominate. Kahneman called it System 1. Dunning and Kruger measured it in a laboratory. Schopenhauer had seen it in the arena. They all arrived at the same place. The irrational mind is not an opponent you convince. It is a force of nature you learn to navigate, or one that destroys you. The problem isn't that you don't know these ideas. The problem is that you know them and still act as if logic works. In this video, you're going to learn the 6 phases of the transition from the exhausted intellectual to the invisible strategist. Phase 1, the mechanics of stupidity, why ignorance is active armor, not a passive flaw. Phase 2, the armed mirror, how to turn a fool's own momentum into a weapon against himself. Phase 3, when the fool has power, the art camouflage that Sema used to bring down an empire. Phase 4, the arrogance of empathy, why trying to save people is the most dangerous form of arrogance. Phase 5, the psychological quarantine, how to protect your mind without isolating yourself from the world. Phase 6, the final transition, the difference between being intelligent and having power, and why only one of those things matters. By the end, you won't leave with a better argument. You'll leave with a different architecture for operating in the world. But before we begin, I need to warn you about the price. This is not self-help. There are no positive affirmations. No, believe in yourself. What comes next will require you to kill a part of yourself you consider a virtue. Your need to be recognized as right. Your compulsion to correct. Your instinct to save those who never asked to be saved. This isn't for everyone. Most people will watch, agree, and keep doing exactly what they've always done, because understanding isn't enough. Real transformation has an emotional cost most people aren't willing to pay. If you're willing, what comes next will change how you read every human interaction for the rest of your life. Take a breath. Phase 1 starts now, and it will show you something no one wants to admit about how stupidity really works. Phase 1. The mechanics of stupidity. Ignorance is bold, and it is precisely that boldness that confuses wisdom for weakness. Schopenhauer, Perurga, and Paralipomena. Most people believe stupidity is a passive state, an absence, a lack of information that, once filled, resolves itself. That belief will destroy you every single time. The average person faces an idiot with arguments, like offering water to someone who isn't thirsty. He explains, reframes, uses analogies, simplifies, then simplifies again. He stands there, bent over the other person, try to build a bridge between two worlds that speak incompatible languages, and walks away exhausted without understanding what went wrong. What went wrong was the diagnosis. Ignorance is not a vacuum. It is a fortress. Dunning and Kruger demonstrated in 1999 what Schopenhauer had already observed with the naked eye. The skills required to be competent at a task are the exact same skills required to recognize competence. The profoundly ignorant person lacks precisely the metacognition that would allow them to see what they don't know. They are not a student without a book. They are a castle with no windows, not from the outside, but from within. And here is what that means in practice. When you present logic to that castle, it doesn't receive it as information. It receives it as a threat. The ego doesn't process "you are wrong" as data. It processes it as an attack on survival. And when ego feels threatened, it doesn't learn, it fortifies. Every argument you launch doesn't open a gap. It closes another door. You are not enlightening anyone. You are arming the enemy with more reasons to resist. Kahneman called the system 1, the fast, emotional, instinctive mode of thinking. The fool is not in system 2, not weighing evidence, calibrating probabilities, revising conclusions. They form the emotion first, then construct the logic afterward, solely to justify it. Trying to convert that process with rational data is like trying to install software on hardware running a different operating system. The architecture doesn't support it. Stop trying to install. Stop trying to convert. The first skill of the strategist is not having the right argument. It's stopping to believe that the argument is the game. When you absorb this not as an interesting concept, but as an operational law, you shift from participant to observer, and the observer sees what the participant never can: the pattern, the cycle, the predictability of someone who believes they're unpredictable. The fool becomes readable, and what is readable can be managed. Think of someone specific in your life: a colleague, a family member, someone you've tried to reach with logic and left defeated. Now look at that person through this lens. It's not a lack of information. It's an active fortress. Does something change in how you see the confrontation? If it does, comment below. I stopped trying to install. Because phase 2 will show you what to do with that castle. Not how to tear it down, but how to make it destroy itself. Phase 2, the arm mirror. Do not refute your opponent's argument. Extend it until it destroys itself. Schopenhauer, the art of being right. The intelligent person's mistake isn't a lack of arguments. It's having too many. When you contradict a fool, you do the most dangerous thing possible. You legitimize them. Every counter-argument you throw says out loud that their idea is worthy of your time, your energy, your attention. You transform delusion into debate. You give garbage the weight of gold. And the fool feels this. Not consciously, but the ego does. Your frustration is fuel. Your presence is validation. The more you resist, the stronger they become. The physics are simple. You push, they push back. You push harder, they push harder. Neither advances. Both exhaust themselves. Schopenhauer found the exit. Don't push back. Pull. The technique is called reductio ad absurdum. And in practice, it is simpler and more devastating than the name suggests. Instead of contradicting the fool's premise, you accept it completely. You agree, you validate, and then you push that premise forward at maximum velocity, directly into the wall. The fool says anyone can paint a masterpiece. You don't argue. You agree with absolute enthusiasm. Then let's quit today. Buy paint this afternoon. You handle the canvases. I'll find a gallery. We'll be millionaires by Friday. Why are we still sitting in this office? Watch what happens. The fool didn't expect this. They expected resistance. Resistance was the game they wanted to play. By agreeing violently, you remove the board. Now they're alone with the conclusion of their own idea. And the conclusion is absurd. To save face, they have to inject nuance. They have to backpedal. They have to, for the first time, argue against themselves. You didn't defeat them with logic. You defeated them with their own stupidity. This doesn't require anger. It doesn't require crude sarcasm. It requires something harder. A completely neutral face and the ability to genuinely agree in a calm voice while you accelerate the car toward the cliff. The second instrument is even more surgical. Schopenhauer called it strategic irony. When the fool corners you with a ridiculous statement and demands agreement, you respond with complete seriousness. What you're proposing is so extraordinary it transcends my capacity to understand. I must defer entirely to your judgment. The fool hears a compliment, thanks you, inflates. Everyone else in the room heard what you actually said. You walked away unharmed. They left satisfied. And you didn't spend a single calorie of real intellectual effort. But I need to ask you something directly right now. You're watching this and thinking, yes, I could do that. But think honestly. Can you stay silent while an idiot says something monumentally absurd in front of you? Can you agree with a smile while you know exactly what you're doing? Or will your ego show up before you finish the sentence? Be honest, because phase 3 is about exactly that moment, when a fool has power over you, and the ego that shows up can cost you everything. Phase 3, the insecure king. To display conspicuous intelligence in the presence of mediocrity is an unforgivable sin. Schopenhauer. There is a specific category of fool who cannot simply be neutralized. They can be navigated, managed, but never confronted, because they have something that transforms stupidity into real danger. Institutional power. This is the manager who signs your review, the client who controls the contract, the family member who controls the money. The fool who occupies a position logic should never have let them reach. The intelligent person's mistake in front of the insecure king is the same mistake as always, but this time the consequences are existential. You walk in with the data, the analysis, the clearly superior solution, and you present it with the confidence of someone who is right. You expect recognition. You expect the quality of the argument to speak for itself. Instead, you feel the atmosphere shift, an imperceptible coldness, a courtesy that dropped 1 degree. In the following weeks, you start being excluded from meetings. Your project is redirected. You are described as difficult to work with. You weren't punished for your incompetence. You were punished for your visible competence. Schopenhauer described this mechanism with clinical precision. The mediocre mind doesn't process your superiority as neutral data. It processes it as a mirror, and the mirror shows exactly what they spend their entire life running from seeing. Your visible, intelligent presence doesn't inform them. It threatens them. And a threat, for someone with power, has a simple solution. Eliminate the source. You cannot win on their terrain. Not while you're visible. The solution isn't hiding your intelligence out of cowardice. It's hiding it as strategy. Historians recorded Sima Yi as the most brilliant strategist of his era. He served under Chao Shuang, a region of absolute power and dangerously low intelligence. If Sima Yi displayed his capability, he would be executed. If he capitulated completely, he would be useless. So he did what only the truly dangerous can do. He performed total collapse. When Chao Shuang's spies came to check on him, Sima Yi spilled soup down his own robes. Confused names, appeared senile. The regent laughed, lowered his guard, stopped seeing Sima Yi as a threat. Months later, while Chao Shuang was on a hunting trip, Sima Yi rose from his sickbed, orchestrated a precise military coup, and seized the entire empire. Chow Shuang lost his head because he believed the performance. The practical application isn't to fake senility, it's to understand the principle. The insecure king needs superiority. Feed it. Ask for advice on irrelevant matters. Let them correct you on minor details. Thank them with calculated sincerity. You are not submitting. You are anesthetizing. While their ego is occupied with the illusion of control, you operate unobstructed on what actually matters. Displayed intelligence is status. Hidden intelligence is power. Is there someone like this in your life? Someone with power over you that you keep trying to convince with logic and always leave losing? Comment here. I operate in silence. Because phase 4 is going to expose something you don't want to admit about why you keep trying to save people, even when they clearly don't want to be saved. Phase 4, the arrogance of empathy. Compassion, that strangest and most dangerous of weaknesses, is the single point when morality of the herd contaminates the noble. Schopenhauer, the world as will and representation. You made it this far. You learned the mechanics of the fortress, mastered the tactics of the strategist, understood how to survive the insecure king, and yet you keep going back to the friend who always self-sabotages, the family member who runs the same drama on a loop, the colleague who has made the same destructive choices for years. You're not debating anymore. You learned that, but you still try, still invest time, still feel that pull of responsibility. That is not kindness. It is arrogance dressed as kindness. Dunning and Kruger revealed the cruel side of this equation. The profoundly incompetent person not only doesn't know their limitations, they lack the cognitive structure to recognize them. The fortress has no windows from the inside, remember? You cannot force a window into a solid castle without destroying the castle, and the castle doesn't want to be destroyed. When you spend hours trying to make someone see the light, you are not being altruistic. You are saying in silence, I know what is better for your life than you do. You are playing God with another person's cognitive limitations. This is the subtlest and most addictive form of arrogance that exists because it comes wrapped in empathy and it feels like virtue. Schopenhauer was blunt. Human character is immutable. People don't change their nature. They change their scenery. If someone is a fool today, they will be a fool tomorrow in the new job, the new relationship, the new city. Accepting this is not cruelty. It is maturity. And accepting it frees you. You are not responsible for anyone's evolution. You don't have that power. And insisting that you do is a form of narcissism most intelligent people never manage to see in themselves. The application is direct and painful. Look at the people in your life where you still invest energy trying to change them. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, how many years have you been trying? Have they changed by a single degree? Stop trying to upgrade someone built to operate exactly as they operate. I'm going to be direct with you now, and you're not going to like it. The reason you keep trying to save these people is not because you care about them. It's because you need them to change to prove to yourself that you have that power. It's about your ego. It always was. If that hurts, it's because it's true. And Phase 5 will show you what to do with that pain. Phase 5, the quarantine. Health is not given. It is won through an unrelenting regime of choices about who you allow to occupy your mind. Schopenhauer, the wisdom of life. You cannot eliminate fools from your life. They are your managers, your clients, your family, sometimes your blood. The question is not how to escape them. It is how to survive contact without being contaminated. Cognitive load theory is merciless here. Your mental capacity is a finite physical resource. Every interaction with an irrational mind doesn't just drain emotion, it degrades your cognition. You leave 1 hour with the fool slower, more irritable, making worse decisions. You are letting a parasite feed on your most valuable intellectual capital. Schopenhauer called it mental diet. He wasn't a misanthrope. He was a strategist about what he allowed in. The quarantine is not physical. It is a practice of presenting an avatar to the irrational world while your real self remains protected. The avatar is polite, agreeable on the surface, speaks in short, non-controversial sentences. That makes sense. I see your perspective. It reflects their noise back at them like a mirror. Meanwhile, behind the avatar, you are completely absent, observing, cataloging, managing, not participating. This strategic dissociation is not dishonesty. It is hygiene. A surgeon wears gloves not out of fear of the patient, but because they understand the risk of contamination. You wear the avatar for the same reason. The cost is real. You'll be called cold, distant, hard to know. Let them. The opinion of an irrational mind about your personality is a diagnosis made by someone without credentials to diagnose. Freedom begins when their opinion stops carrying weight. There's a specific person in your life you know drains your energy every time you interact with them, but you haven't established that distance yet. You know who it is. Comment here. I know who it is. You don't have to say the name, but acknowledging it to yourself is the first cut. Because phase 6 is about what happens after you finally make that cut, and why it is more frightening than it seems. Phase 6, the architect. This is the hardest one. Not because it's complex, because it requires you to kill something you considered a virtue your entire life. You spent years believing your intelligence was your identity, that being the most rational person in the room was who you were, that needing to be right was a form of integrity, not a weakness, that trying to convert people was generosity, not ego. All of that was a story, a comfortable story that justified the cycle, the debate, the exhaustion, the resentment, the repeat. When you finally stop debating, something strange happens. The silence arrives. And in that silence, without the constant friction to define yourself against, you face a question that has no easy answer. Who are you when you're not proving anything to anyone? Most intelligent people never get here. They prefer the familiar comfort of the battle, even while losing to the discomfort of existing without needing validation. They surround themselves with lesser minds precisely because it is safe, easy to look like a genius among the mediocre. Schopenhauer warned, a mind of high intellect that fraternizes with the vulgar will eventually be dragged down to their level. The environment shapes the thinking. If you spend your days in trench warfare with the trivial, your mind becomes trivial. The real transition is not learning to deal with fools. It is stopping needing them. Stopping needing the friction to feel like you exist. Stopping needing them to acknowledge your superiority in order to believe it. Stopping needing to win the battle to know you won the game. Intelligence is knowing you are right. Power is not needing them to know it. Intelligence is winning the argument. Power is winning the objective while they believe they won the argument. When that distinction moves from concept to instinct, when you stop reacting and start architecting, the dynamic of every interaction changes. You walk into a room and you see the mechanisms. You see each person's ego, their fears, their need for validation, not with judgment, with clarity. You are no longer a participant in the chaos. You are the observer who, when necessary, becomes its silent architect. This is cold. It is lonely in ways that are hard to describe. The people you leave behind won't understand. Some will call it arrogance. Others, coldness. Let them. The lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinion of sheep. And the architect doesn't weep when the demolition crew doesn't understand the blueprints. So, what happens when you really apply all of this? You learn that ignorance isn't absence, it's active armor, and arguing against it is feeding it. You learn to use a fool's own momentum against them, agreeing violently until their own idea implodes. You learn to survive the insecure king not through confrontation, but through strategic camouflage, like Sima Yi, who performed collapse to conquer an empire. You learn that trying to save people isn't kindness. It's the ego seeking power over someone who never asked to be saved. You learn to build a psychological quarantine, an avatar that protects what you really are from contact with what drains who you're becoming. And you learn the difference between intelligence and power. Now the real question, are you going to apply this or go back to the debate? The world is getting louder, more reactive, more addicted to the validation of strangers and the warmth of wars that resolve nothing. That is your advantage. While most people spend energy debating those who cannot be convinced, you learn to operate differently. While they chase recognition, you built clarity. While they exhaust themselves in the trenches, you already left and are building in silence. If you made it here, you are not the majority. Most people click, watch 2 minutes, and return to the same patterns. You stayed. That already says something about the kind of mind you are and the kind you're deciding to become. Now you have a choice. You can close this video, say that makes sense, and continue exactly as you were. Back to the debate, the cycle, the drain, comfortable, familiar, safe. Or you can decide that today was the last day a fool had free access to your energy, that your intelligence is no longer a public service, that you operate as an architect, not a debater. You cannot have both. The choice defines who you are from today forward. If you're going to apply this, comment now. I am the architect, not for me, for you, to mark the moment something changed. If this video opened something you couldn't name before, the like is the acknowledgement of that, not for the algorithm, but for yourself, as a mark that this content was worth your time. If you want to keep going deeper into the psychology of power, into the structures that move people, organizations, and invisible hierarchies, subscribe. There is much more coming. And in the next video, what happens when you stop debating fools and encounter someone who is not a fool, someone who sees your strategy and uses it back against you? The rules change entirely. And that content is unlike anything you watched on human psychology.